I'd like to thank you for joining me today. I'm a huge fan of Hamilton and a lot of your previous work, and so I'm super excited to have you on. And so,
Happy to be here.
thank you. And so, to start off, can you please explain a little bit about yourself for those who don't know who you are?
Yeah. So my name is Elvie. I am from Oklahoma. I'm born and raised in Oklahoma City. I went to the University of Oklahoma for music education, and I'm currently a principal standby in the Angelica Company of Hamilton. As a standby, I cover the Aaron Burr, Lafayette, and Thomas Jefferson, King George, and Hercules Mulligan, James Madison. And this is my third national tour to do. I played Judas in the Jesus Christ Superstar tour for 2 years, and then I was a swing in the Waitress tour for a year. So yeah.
That's awesome. And so, before we jump into a little bit of your current and previous work, I want to talk a little bit about your journey as a performer. And so, as you mentioned, you studied at the University of Oklahoma. And so, how did your experiences there influence the artist you are today?
Yeah, actually quite a lot. So when I went to the university, when I auditioned to go to OU, I auditioned for musical theater and didn't get in. So that was, that's like always like a big part of my journey, if you will,
Yeah.
that I would about. And so I did music education instead. I like had auditioned for both and didn't know which one I wanted to do, so the decision was kind of made for me. Um, but I still got to do obviously like voice lessons and all of those things. And
Yeah.
so it really actually did prepare me a lot for like the like sorry, my dog is like wanting to play, of course. For the professionalism part of it all.
Yeah.
I did a show my sophomore year at OU called The Music of Angela Weber, and they brought in this director who's now like become one of my mentors. His name is Hugh Wooldridge, and he lives and works in the UK and on the West End, and it's done a lot of big shows over there. And so they brought him in to like cast and direct the show, and it by far was like the most intense like experience I have ever been a part of to this day. It's in terms of like the standard that he set for us with like being on time and like knowing your music and being prepared and all of that and being professional like in the rehearsal space and in the performance space. And so it really has like my time at OU has really impacted me a lot in terms of my career and how I've been able to, not only like book a job, like, you know what I mean? You have to be, talented and skilled in the things like singing and, all of that stuff to be able to like book the job, but also to be able to keep the job, I think is the things that like people don't really talk about much. And I feel like that is the stuff that like OU really prepared me for, was like keeping a job.
Yeah.
Um, knowing how to be professional in the workplace and how to work hard and also advocate for yourself, but all of that.
Yeah, for sure. And so when you were younger, was there a specific moment that made you realize that theater was what you wanted to pursue?
Yes, actually, my older brother did theater. I was supposed to be the smart kid in my family, and my older brother was like supposed to be the talented one, and he is talented. He's very talented. But he was doing like musicals and stuff when we were in school. And my school was 6th through 12th grade, so like when I was in middle school, he was in high school. And so anyway, he when he got a car, I would have to like ride with him to and from school, obviously, and I would sit and just watch them at like their musical rehearsals
Yeah.
because at my school, it was a performing arts school, so you had to be in high school to be in the musical, and it was like a very intense thing and blah blah blah. And so I would sit and just watch their rehearsals, and they were doing the one that like when I really like got bit by the theater bug was How to Succeed in Business
Oh
Without
yeah,
Really
such
Trying.
a good show.
And the song Coffee Break, for whatever reason in that show, like it just completely like enamored me. And that was kind of when the theater bug like
Yeah.
bit me. Like, wait a minute, this is really cool and amazing. So yeah, I always am thankful to my older brother for having to like put up with me sitting in the audience at musical rehearsals when I was in like 7th grade.
Yeah, for sure. That's such a great journey. And so, you're currently on tour with Hamilton, as you mentioned, as a principal standby. And so, what was the audition process like for the show?
Long. It's actually it's interesting. It was really long until it wasn't. And so I first auditioned for Hamilton back in 2017. And I it was one of those things where like everybody, all of my friends were like, you need to audition for this musical. And I was like, they're never gonna like I still lived in Oklahoma. I was like, they're not gonna see me, whatever. And so eventually my friends convinced me to send in a tape. So I sent in a tape. And like 2 weeks later, I got an email back that said that we, want you to do a callback tape for Lafayette and Thomas Jefferson. And I like cried. And of course, and so then I, sent another tape and blah, blah, blah. And so anyway, all of that to say, I ended up going and like auditioning in person twice from that like initial tape and then kind of never heard anything else. And so then, a couple of years went by and then I started getting like videotape requests from
Yeah.
Hamilton. And so that happened probably, of course, there was like the 2 years of the pandemic in there somewhere. And so, you know what I mean? That was from like 2017 all the way up to, I guess, like 2023
Oh, wow.
was me like sending them stuff and it like just kind of, I don't know, going
Yeah.
into the ether. I don't know if anybody was watching it. I don't know. And then my friend, I was on the Jesus Christ Superstar tour and one of my friends who was subletting my apartment in New York was like, "Oh, did you hear that Hamilton's having like an open call in like a month or so?" And I was like, "No." And so I wasn't like planning to go. And then he
Yeah.
told me about it. And I was like, "Well, I don't know if I can make that work because the tour was going to be in Vancouver at
Oh,
the time that this audition was happening in New York. So like total opposite side of the
yeah.
country in a different country, all of that." And so I like thought about it and then I looked it up and was like, okay, if I, like take out this show and da 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 da, like I can fly to New York overnight and then I can go to the audition and I can fly back and be back for like the next Tuesday performance. And so that's what I did. And went to this open call, lost my luggage, by the way, the
Oh, wow.
airport, the airline lost my luggage. I never got that luggage back. And I went to this open call and I was still non-union at the time, so there was like no guarantee that I would even like get to audition and
Yeah.
all of this stuff. And I got like to audition within like the first like hour and a half of like being
Um,
there, which is like pretty unusual.
yeah.
And so I did that, and I just remember thinking like, I've lost my luggage to come to this open call. It better be worth it. And then 2 weeks or 3 weeks or so later, I got an email that was like, "Hey, we want to see you in person back in New York." For Hamilton again. And I was like, okay, this is going to be another thing where like I go and then I never hear anything back. And I show up and there's like a camera in the room and like all these people. And people are outside like waiting and they're like, yeah, this is like my agent told me like this is the final callback. And I was like, oh, like I don't think that's true because like I just went to an open call and then I got this appointment. So
Yeah.
like this can't be the final callback. And so I go in and audition, and then they're like, okay, you need to stay and dance. So wait around and then dance. And then at the end of like the dance call, they're like, okay, so like we'll be picking people from this group of 40. And I was like, wait, what? Like this is it? And so that's why I say it was like a long process
Yeah.
until it wasn't. And it was like a lot of like ups and downs and videos and all of these things for years and years and years. And then I went to an open call and then a final call back, and that was it.
Yeah. Wow. That is like a full-on journey then. Like, that's
Yeah.
incredible. And so you cover most of the standbys. And so is there a specific character or track that you primarily enjoy playing, and if so, why?
Yeah, I would say there's two. I My dream role in the show for like since I like found out what Hamilton even was Lafayette Jefferson,
Yeah.
which I will actually be playing tonight.
Oh, awesome.
And so that role has been like really fun and special to be able to do. And I always tell people it just feels like a like hyperbolized version of me. I like to think I'm like not as mean as Jefferson is, but I can be a little sassy, and so it just feels like a like hyperbolized version of who Elvie is, which is fun to just kind of be a ham on stage. And then also, I love playing Burr. That's probably my favorite role to play now that I'm like know them and am
Yeah.
doing it. It I feel like you get more of a like character arc and journey
Yeah.
with it. Obviously, you're playing one person for the whole time instead of two people. And I actually really love like the narration part of it. I randomly like a random thing that I have like found myself doing a lot is like hosting events, like emceeing things. And so I really like that like part where I get to like talk to the audience and kind of like break out of the shell of the show
Yeah.
and have like a personal moment almost. So yeah, I would say those two are really fun and special.
And especially towards the end of the show, Bo really has like some incredible moments in the show of like some fun songs to sing, some like incredible like notes to sing. Like it's just a fun track in general.
Yeah. Yeah, I really my favorite song to do as Burr is Your Obedient Servant, which I feel
Yeah.
like is like kind of a sleeper song because it's not like the most like vocally like demanding or anything like that.
Yeah.
But it is just I don't know. I just really love the like the emotion in that song and how it's kind of like a snarky email that you would like
Yeah.
send to someone,
Yeah.
but like written out in letter form. I just think it's funny and yeah, I really enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure. And so this is your third national tour. And so what are some of the lessons that you've learned from touring with all three different shows?
That's a great question. Um, I'd say like every experience is gonna be like what you make it, which I think is such like a cheesy thing. But I've done the first two tours I did were non-union tours where we were on a bus
Oh,
day in and day out, and we were doing like one-nighters and split weeks and things like that. And then Hamilton is very different. We rarely ever travel by bus, and we're in places for the least amount of time is usually like 2 weeks. We're here in Chicago for 2 months, so it's like the exact opposite of like the kind of touring that I'm used to. But I really like enjoyed those like non-union tours that I did partially probably because I didn't know any different, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
those are my like beginning experiences, but also like, yeah, like was the bus like uncomfortable and being in a different city like every day, like uncomfortable and like tiresome? Yes. But like it was also kind of like fun in a way. And it
Yeah.
really kind of felt like the like feeling that you get from doing like community theater or like theater at your high school where it's like not the most glamorous thing, but it's like still really special, you know what I mean? And so I would say that is probably like a big lesson I've learned is like every experience is what you make it. And then also just I've learned a lot about like advocating for myself. I didn't get an agent until my second year of doing Jesus Christ Superstar. And so like those first two contracts I like negotiated myself. And then there were things that happened like during the contract where I had to like call the producer and say like, "Hey, this is the thing that's happening and like I'm not okay with this and this is how I feel like it should be like rectified," and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
And so I it taught me a lot about like advocating for myself like in a professional way as an actor, as someone who didn't have like representation. And I think that's like a skill that like every actor should have, but like most I don't think do because we're kind of taught like, oh, once you get good enough, you like get an agent and they will handle all of the problems for you. And so then it kind of creates this like weird dynamic between like actors and agents of like, oh, this is this person that's just supposed to have all the bad conversations and actors don't really get like the opportunity to do that for themselves and figure out how to navigate that. And I had to figure that out very, very early on. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so you've done a handful of different types of shows. And so is there a specific role that sticks out to you of like, man, I really enjoyed playing that role. It taught me a lot.
Judas and Jesus Christ Superstar, 100%. The hardest thing I've ever done, truthfully. I remember when I did my final callback, the director, like after I was done singing in the room, like stepped outside and was like talking to me. Well, they like whispered in the room for like 5 minutes, and I was like, what could they be talking about? And they were like, just wait outside. And I was like, okay. And then he comes outside and he's like, okay, so I just have, like some questions I want to ask you. And I was like, okay. And one of the questions was like, how do you feel about like having to do this 8 times a week? Which I don't know how familiar you are with Jesus Christ
Yeah.
Superstar, but Judas is ridiculous. He's basically like singing soprano the whole
Yeah.
time and screaming, being dramatic, whatever. And so anyway, I was like, I think that it's going to be the hardest thing that I've ever done. And if anybody came in this room and told you that they felt good about it or like told you that it was going to be easy, they lied to you to your face. Because if you're doing it right, it should not be easy and
Yeah.
it should be very, very difficult. And it was very, very difficult. I it taught me a lot about like taking care of myself and my body, and taught me a lot of, it really humbled me. There was a lot of squeaks and cracks that I had on stage in front of sold out audiences, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm not as great as I thought I was. And things happen, right? Like it's like those things are bound to happen if you are doing a long running production. So nobody is immune to that. I think there's videos of Leslie Odom Jr. cracking in Hamilton when he was on Broadway. So like that happens to everyone, but I think it really just taught me a lot about like humbling myself, and like a lot about like my self-worth outside of like theater, because like I was having those moments that were like, okay, like I can't like have all of my like being wrapped up in like how great my performance was on
Yeah.
stage tonight. Although I tried to give a amazing performance every single time. And yeah, it taught me a lot about like taking care of myself and what I needed to sacrifice in order to really be able to do this job. I think people like outside of theater think that like doing theater, even at this level, is easy to some extent, or like is not as difficult as it is. And even for people who perform in other venues, like it can be like a rude awakening how difficult really this is, I think Megan the Stallion is in Moulin Rouge, and the other day
Yeah.
like had to, call out middle of the show, and they said she was like super dehydrated, and all of that, and had to go to the hospital. And that is not someone who is like doesn't have experience performing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? She's done like tours and arenas and things like that. But I think theater really is just like that different, and is can be like a rude awakening to people. So it taught me a lot about that as well.
Yeah, for sure. And so, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Mm, I think the advice I'd give to my younger self is just to not be in a hurry. I think especially now with like TikTok and the way that people, get discovered and all of that, like it feels like time is always like running out. And it feels like, the people are younger and younger who are making their Broadway debuts and doing all of these really amazing things. And some of that, is true. Like people are younger, and, they're people are being found in different ways, and found from a TikTok video, or, whatever. Miles Frost, who was the first MJ on Broadway, was found like, I think, dancing like on the street somewhere, right? So there's like all kinds of ways that people are doing it, but your journey is like your journey. And mine has definitely been full of like twists and turns and ups and downs. And it started with a rejection email from the University of Oklahoma. You know what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
all of that is to say, like, there is time, and like time isn't running out, and it's like never really too late to like get back into it and to find your way in doing the thing. And I think if I knew that earlier on, I would have saved myself like a lot of like stress about like, well, I'm never going to be able to do this because I didn't get this thing, or didn't get into this program, or this isn't happening for me right now, and I see it happening for other people.
Yeah, for sure. And so this next question kind of ties into the last one. But what advice would you give to younger performers who want to pursue acting as a career full time?
Ooh, the advice I always give is to find something else that you love to do, and do that also. Um, Obviously we love theater. It's great. It's where we find like a lot of our friends and all of that, and where we feel safe and heard and blah 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 blah. But in theater, 9 times out of 10, we're playing like real people who have real lives that are not theater. Like very rare, unless you're playing, like Kathy in Last 5 Years, are you playing someone who is like their thing in the show is like doing theater?
Yeah.
Usually we're playing other people whose thing is, I don't know, playing basketball or golf, or just going to work all the
Yeah.
time, whatever it may be. So you have to find other things to do outside of theater, so that you like first off have like experiences you can pull from to do those other roles and things, but also so you can be like a whole person. That was something that the pandemic taught me. When theaters, I moved to New York the day that Broadway shut down.
Oh, yeah.
um, yeah, and so it really taught me like, oh, like I need to have something else because if this thing goes away, then what am I going to like? Who
Yeah.
am I without it? So I always tell people, it's great to have like, all of the friends in theater and da 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 da, and to like have that be your main thing, but have other things as well. And it's also really nice, especially when you get into doing it professionally, to have friends that are outside of theater that don't know a single thing about a call time or sound check or an eight count. You know what I mean? Like they don't know nothing about any of that lift call. They don't know nothing about that
Yeah.
stuff. And you can like go to them and complain about that stuff and they're like, okay, yeah, whatever. Anyway, it helps you remember like there is still like real life happening out in the world. And there are still people who are hungry and who are cold and need a code and all of that
Yeah.
stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That's great advice. And so that actually wraps up the interview today. I'd like to thank you for joining me.
Thank you.